It's showtime. Welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. I am your host, Willie Bragg. Today, we're going to talk about things that are supposed to be obvious, but somehow people kind of miss the point. And we're talking about the rebranding of the modern Republican Party. And this is going to sound like a throwback, like back in the days when I was more of a partisan hack. Where I do criticize both parties, and obviously I criticize the Republicans more than I do the Democrats, but I do my fair share of criticizing both parties, and people get the impression that it just depends who you talk to. If you talk to Blue MAGA, basically, the vote blue no matter who crowd, and people who are kind of somewhat adjacent to the vote blue no matter who crowd, the resistance, they will assume that I am a closet Trump supporter because I don't have the irrational paranoia or the Trump derangement syndrome that many liberals and progressives and centrists suffer from. You talk to a red MAGA Republican Party hack, they think that I am a vote blue no matter who shitlib. They think I am a Biden bro. They think I am a Democratic Party hack. So it just depends who you talk to, and it's all about projection. I'm just me. So and I criticize both parties because, in the words of Tim Black, both parties suck, Johnson, and they really, honestly do suck. So what I want to talk about it's not necessarily about Russia, Ukraine, although it does kind of focus on that because it's all about projection. I'm going to overuse that word, I think, in this commentary. It's all about projection because the Republicans in Congress and a lot of Trump supporters are kind of on the let's don't get involved in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And I don't disagree with them on that. I really don't. However, let's not pretend that the Republican Party are born again isolationists, or that somehow that the Republican Party has been taken over completely on the foreign policy level by paleoconservatives and libertarian types that favors or generally favors non-interventionism. Let's not pretend that, because you got to understand that there's more to it that meets the eye. That's where the term projection comes in, and it becomes super relevant in that regard. So I think that what we need to do is we need to go and begin at the beginning, and let's start with post 9/11. And that's probably where we need to start, because when we start there, we can get a full picture of what I'm talking about. George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and their mob and ghouls of neocons who basically destroyed the U.S. Constitution, basically with the USA Patriot Act, and creating the Department of Homeland Security and spying on all of us and using detainees at Guantanamo Bay over there down in Cuba, and administering torture program, invading Iraq and invading Afghanistan, making the world significantly less safe, squandering $10 trillion. Their regime, we're $30 trillion in debt. The third of our debt is from what they have done, their incompetence of what they have done. I remember in the last decade, people act like Barack Obama, who sucked, by the way, but they pretended like Obama invented debt. Bush and Cheney are at the root of the debt in this country that we have right now. And if this country ever collapses due to debt, I am going to blame Bush and Cheney for this. You can't blame Obama. You can't blame Biden. You really even can't blame Trump. You can't blame Bush and Cheney. Will be to blame for this country collapsing, its economy collapsing down the road. Because if we didn't have the Iraq war and if we didn't have the Afghanistan invasion, again, we're talking about $7 trillion in Iraq when it was all said and done. We're talking about $3 trillion in Afghanistan. From a fiscal standpoint, if that wouldn't have happened, we would not be in the kind of debt that we have today. Imagine what $10 trillion could have done in terms of helping people. And, it's amazing. We can't afford, we hear it, we can't afford to go and fix things like, water in Mississippi and Michigan, to have clean water or anything like that. But we can bail out banks and we can drone strike people and all that. But okay, after the Bush Cheney era and McCain, Romney, standard neocons, probably not as bad as Bush and Cheney in their own way, but they would have pretty much continued it. That particular course. And Obama did in his own way too. He actually expanded the war to 7 countries. So the neocon movement were divided when Trump came along. So some of these neocons became Democrats again, and some of them became never Trump or Republicans, meaning that they even though they couldn't quite get themselves to vote for the Democrats, they voted either third party or not voted in these elections. And so there is that. And some of them probably will come back to the Republican fold if Ron DeSantis, hashtag Ron DeGroomer, becomes the Republican nominee. So there is that as well. So I want to talk about, as I said, the Ukraine situation. As I said, the Republican Party is divided. You have the anti-freedom caucus of the Republican Party, in the Congress, those type, they're called a freedom caucus. I call them the anti-freedom caucus. They seem to be non-interventionists in Russia, Ukraine. And they will probably not be considered neocons as a general rule. And whereas the Democratic Party has turned into Bush Cheney neoconservatives on the foreign policy scale, instead of the flag in the Bible, it's with a rainbow flag. But still, is pretty much 2022, 2023 is basically 2002, 2003 all over again, reprised. So, and it's all due to Trump derangement syndrome. If Trump says, I'm for this, the Democrats will say, I'm for that. And that's what it comes down to. And it's the other way around. When Obama was president, prior to Obama becoming president, the Heritage Foundation created what is called the Affordable Care Act, and they wanted that particular healthcare reform as the law of the land. When a moderate centrist, bland Democrat by the name of Barack Obama became president and said, well, instead of a single payer system, we'll use this Republican plan and we can bring everybody together. Then all of a sudden, the Heritage Foundation and the Republican Party, who were for the Affordable Care Act, all of a sudden turned against it. Shewan had called it compulsive contrarianism, and it's based on partisan hackery. If my team isn't in charge, the position I held previously, if that president or is in favor of it, well, I'm just not going to be in favor of it because that person's in favor of it. It's called compulsive contrarianism instead of doing what is right. And I think that when Ron DeSantis becomes president, if we're not nuked, I think that a lot of the Republicans who are currently anti-war are going to turn into Bush-Cheney era neocons, and they're going to be like, they're going to be favoring boots on grounds, first strike of nukes, and all of that. And some of them are already. I mean, people like Lindsey Graham and people like that. And he's talking about, I don't want to say because I could get this channel shut down, but he made some claims on, he made some statements on Twitter, and that anybody else would have gotten shut down for a heck of a lot less. So now here's the thing about it. Trump got accused of being in bed with Russia, and I think that's part of the reason why the Democrats are in favor of this war effort over there in the Ukraine. It's payback time. That they really do feel like that Vladimir Putin put Trump in the White House in 2016, just as Republicans feel like, they felt like that China and Venezuela put Biden in the White House in 2020. Neither of which is true. And before the algorithms start to talk on YouTube or start to catch my words on YouTube, I'm making fun of election conspiracy theories by the morons from both parties. I am not advocating election denialism nor conspiracy theories. So please do not shut me down, YouTube, if for me talking about people talking about election denialism. I want to make that clear. So anyway, Trump, to prove that he's not in bed with Russia, he took the very best thing that Ronald Reagan did when he was president. And believe me, it's hard to acknowledge for me to say something positive about Ronald Reagan. But the one positive thing Ronald Reagan did, and in the interview with Scott Ritter a few weeks ago, he called it his treaty, and he was correct. We're talking about the INF treaty, the Intermediate Range the nuclear force treaty that started to reduce the nuclear weapons that were aimed toward each other, the Soviets and the U.S. Well, Trump got rid of that treaty to prove that he was not in bed with Russia. Well, he didn't have to prove that. I knew he was not in bed with Russia. I never believed in Russiagate. Just as I do not believe in China and Venezuela gate in regard to the 2020 election. Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to. Hillary was a lousy candidate, defeated by a lousy candidate by the name of Donald Trump. Donald Trump was a lousy candidate, defeated by another lousy candidate by the name of Joe Biden. End of story. And the joke is on the American people. They should have just rejected. They should have rejected Trump and Clinton in 2016, and they should have rejected Biden and Trump in 2020. So the joke is on the American people there. As I said, both parties suck, Johnson. So, and here's the thing. Now, I do, in the words of Glenn Greenwald, he actually, in an interview, said that there was a slightly less aggressive foreign policy under Trump. There's an element of truth to that. It was by accident. Trump came in there. He had to deal with the establishment Republican in his administration and in the party. He had the resistance. And so with all the chaos that was going on, it actually prevented the U.S., thankfully, from being as aggressive as it would probably have been under normal circumstances. So there was slightly, by accident, slightly less rattle sabling by the United States. That's not to say that the United States was totally given up on its efforts abroad the world, there was still a lot of mischief making, trying to topple the government of Venezuela by declaring Juan Guaido as the president. Really? Jackasses like John Bolton, urging Trump to do this crap. Or in early 2020, the drone strike in Baghdad, General Qasem Soleimani in Iran, who, even though he's a bad guy, he was a bad guy that was getting actual real bad guys in the Middle East. The same enemy that Iran has, the same enemies that the United States has. And that's a dirty little secret when it comes to foreign policy that people don't really ever talk about. But Trump did that to basically to make his neocon base happy, and I say that without apology. That's what it comes down to. So as I said, Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, when it comes to foreign policy, they are the Republican Party. They are the Republican Party. So and you combine that with all the usual suspects, Kevin McCarthy and Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, Ted Cruz, all that. I mean, this is just not a pretty picture, So, Kevin McCarthy, standard neocon. Marjorie Taylor Greene, in my opinion, she's a borderline neo-Nazi. Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz, probably the closest thing to a person, probably the closest thing to a normie, those two, but they're still awful people. Matt Gaetz, awful individual. Paul Gosar, a really, really awful. Lauren Boebert, a really, really awful person. So, and pretty much all these folks favor an aggressive foreign policy. And really weird is actually Donald Trump is probably the peacenik out of that group, because if it was up to the rest of these people, China they will go into China. A lot of these folks who don't want to go into Ukraine wants to go into China. And to put a stop to China invading Taiwan, just like Joe Biden, just like the rest of the Democrats, they're no different. They don't mind flexing their muscle against China, and that's just as dangerous as it is Russia. And remember, all the morons from both parties, they don't realize Russia and China are allies. They're allies of each other. So if you go and fuck with China, you're still fucking with Russia. All you people on the right who don't want to go and fuck with Russia and Ukraine, but you want to go and start a fight with China, well, you're still going to end up getting into a fight with Russia in that regard. So that's pretty damn stupid. It really is. And then Iran, the Iran thing. Donald Trump, in order to get away to appease the neocons and the religious right, he withdrew from the U.S. from the Iran peace deal, the treaty. The one of the best things on foreign policy Obama did while he was president, and it was working to prevent Iran from having a nuke and to assimilate Iran into the family of nations. And it was working. And Trump ripped the treaty just to appease the neocons and the religious right, who has foreign policies that kind of overlap. They're not necessarily the same, but the neocons in the Republican Party and the Christian right, they are parallel in the sense that they have a very similar foreign policy. They love battling Muslims in the Middle East, and they love they simp for Israel, especially when Israel do bad things. So that's what it comes down to. So there is that. But let me just add to the fact that in a nutshell, when you think of the modern Republican Party in terms of foreign policy, when it comes to the media, these two morons, as far as the media face of foreign policy in regard to the Republican Party, Sean Hannity and Mark Levin are the embodiment of what is wrong with the Republican Party in terms of foreign policy. They are the Republican Party in terms of foreign policy. And if you think that they're not, you're kidding yourselves. You are kidding yourselves. Now, Sean Hannity would have probably been a never-Trumper Republican if he didn't know the guy that well, because he lived in New York. So he says he lived in New York and he knew Donald Trump in New York. I guess politics is local, and he had a natural affinity toward the guy. I think he would have probably been a never-Trumper in all other circumstances. With regard to Mark Levin, he was a never-Trumper initially in 2016. I think he voted for Trump reluctantly, but he didn't begrudge other Republicans who sat out on the 2016 elections. So he is an adjacent never-Trumper who became an enthusiastic pro-Trumper in the 2020 election, which makes him probably one of the scummiest people around. But what the scummiest Republicans are the never-Trumper Republicans who hated Trump in 2016 because they thought he was too liberal, who became the biggest Trump sycophant because he done right-wing things beyond their dreams. But now, as the year 2024 comes along, instead of going with Trump, they're going to go with Ron DeSantis. Those are the worst people around. The ones who hated Trump, then loved Trump, and now wants to go and suck up to DeSantis. Those are the worst people around when it comes to the political discourse. And Mark Levin is kind of an embodiment of that kind of a person within the Republican Party. So, and let me just add, here's the thing. This is where a lot of the neocons, and this is where the MAGA American First morons like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz have in common with people like the Sean Hannitys and the Lindsey Grahams and the all these other neocon assholes. They act like that there is an immigration problem. You know, oh my goodness, that border, oh, that border. They're talking about invading Mexico. That's not anti-war. That's militarism. That's American aggressionism right there. Yeah. I oppose the war, the American involvement in Russia, Ukraine. I oppose American posturing toward China, and I oppose America posturing toward Mexico. America doesn't have any business. America does not have any business being a bully around the world, or with doing what they're doing in Venezuela, bullying Venezuela, bullying Cuba, bullying Iran. I mean, some of these countries are not particularly nice countries. I get it, but it's not like the United States has the moral authority. As my friend Patrick O'Neill from the Catholic Worker Movement said, when you think about it, when it comes to nuclear weapons, only one country has dropped a nuke that killed whole populations of people. And that was the United States against the people of Japan in 1945. Just saying. No other country has done that. No other country has done that. And so you got to think about this sort of thing. And so I think that as much as I favor Medicare for all and the Green New Deal and all of this sort of thing, what is important is humanity to be saved. So it's not just important to try to prevent a nuclear war between the United States and Russia. It's just as important not to prevent a war between the United States and China. Because if you fuck with the United States and Russia, you're going to be fucking with China. If you fuck with China, you're going to be fucking with Russia. When you fuck with countries that have nukes, I want you to project this. Countries will have nukes and they start fucking with each other. That's not a good scenario, folks. We're talking about humanity. And no one is the good guy who uses the nuke. Whether it's first use of nukes or those that respond, nobody's the good guy in that regard. I want you to think about that. And before, when you hear that the Republican Party have turned a new leaf on foreign policy, they haven't. The Democrats are garbage, but so are the Republicans. They still are garbage on foreign policy. So if we get frustrated with the Democrats and all of that, I get a little worried that we get so frustrated with the Democrats because they do nothing and they're not going to do anything, that some people will be like, what's the use? Might as well go vote Republican. There are people that would do that. Please don't. Because honestly, they are worse. Their policies are worse. And when Republicans eventually get elected and the Democrats come back, they end up adopting some of the Republican measures even more. We've seen it since the days of Reagan. Let's put a stop to this. If you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you disagree, comment anyway. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we're the muckrakers of our time. Subscribe to this channel here on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Follow me on Twitch, Facebook, and follow me on Twitter, because that's where I live most of the time. And one of these days, when I get up to 100 subscribers on Rumble, you'll see me on Rumble too. So there you have it. And I'm hoping it will be on some of the other platforms. Special request. I'm almost up to 600 people. I'm almost up to 600 subscribers. If you can, please, let's kind of help me, grow this channel here on YouTube. And I appreciate your support. And for the people in the last 2 or 3 weeks that have actually subscribed to this channel, I want to thank you all. I had a nice little spike in the last couple of weeks, and I do thank you for every one of you that have subscribed to my channel. I want to let you know that I appreciate your support. So anyway, until next time, I'm Willie Bragg. We will talk soon. Bye-bye.